Hello, DevOps people. Welcome to Full Stack Live, my weekly live coding stream. I love it when these sessions are interactive, so don't be shy. If there's anything you'd like to share, if there's anything you'd like to ask, just pop into Twitch chat and we can have a talk. Yeah, weekly live coding stream is a bit of a misnomer at the moment. My schedule is not that regular as I want it to be. I am streaming for the first time on a Saturday because I thought, okay, over the weekend there will be a bit more time and people will have more opportunity to tune in. However, I took a nap with my little son earlier and didn't wake up in time, so instead of 3:30 p.m. we're now starting at 4:49. I apologize and I'll try to be more on time next Saturday. On top of Saturdays, I'm trying to do some spontaneous live coding sessions whenever I am working on something that seems remotely interesting, which at the time is mostly the hosting dashboard of my company. We've built this dashboard on Ruby on Rails a few years ago, and I'll be honest, it shows because there are still quite a few little bugs and style inconsistencies that I'd like to iron out. And I guess that's also what we're going to do today. So let's take a peek into our issue queue here. There is one bug that I've opened recently because I thought there would be an issue. However, this issue that when a customer clicked and created a new database on the dashboard, the database didn't export it to our system management. I wasn't able to reproduce this, and I think it might have been a one-off problem, so that's what I'm going to do here. I'll write this off. I could not reproduce the issue. Database changes seem to properly trigger a Chef update. Chef is the system management software we're using. So this might have been a single occurrence. And I'll close this. Sometimes things are that easy. I'm still working on this issue here. Rubocop doesn't check all the files. I had realized that while we are checking the main application for coding style, we did not check, for example, the tests. And I've enabled Rubocop now in its own branch to check the tests, which only triggered about 500 style violations, and I'm still working on this. I would like to do this later today, so just to check off a few of these style issues, but I'd like to start with this one that is that it seems pretty simple because it's basically just that Thoughtbot renamed their gem that creates test data from factory girl to factory bot, and in order to get the newest version we'll have to update our dependency here and probably change a few places where we use the name factory girl. So that should be an easy thing to get started with today. It is issue number 417. So I'll go into my tmux session here, where I'm working on issue 448 at the moment. Everything is committed, so I can check out master, make sure it's current, git smart pull, already up to date, and so we can spawn our new branch number 417 factory bot. By the way, this is also an experiment in working when my kids are at home. I'm a bit anxious that things will get loud during this session, but I asked not to be disturbed. Let's see how things will hold up. 417 factory bot, and so let's see how things look at the moment. The gem file says factory girl rails is 450. Is this the only place where we're using factory girl? Factory. Yep, that's it. So it's factory girl rails, and we'll probably have to change this to factory bot rails. Let's check if that's actually the case. Factory bot gem. Here we are. It's factory underscore bot. We don't. Do we have to use factory bot rails? Is there a factory bot rails? Yes, there is a factory bot rails. And let's give this a star, by the way. Why not? Transitioning from factory girl rates. Check out the guide. Okay. Upgrade from factory girl. Upgrading a code base should involve only a few steps, and in most cases it involves updating a gem file, factories files, and support file configuring the testing framework. Yeah, in the Rails helper file. Let's start with gem file. Replace references to factory girl rails with factory bot rails. Both new gems are available starting at version 482. So let's change this to factory bot rails, and we'll use pessimistic dependence. Let's see, 482. That's that. We could even leave off the dependency and force ourselves to update it from time to time. So now we'll have to replace all constant references. That's obvious. So let's see wherever we have factory girl. It's mostly in the factories files. We're using it to generate seed data. And in a few helper files. Okay, let's get started with the factories then. Here we go. Factories. Let's simply start from the top. Hey, Greek Draw, how you doing? Happy to have you on the stream. Ruby sure looks like Elixir. I think that's not a coincidence, is it? But it's encouraging that you say that because Elixir is one of the languages I'd be interested in if I had a bit of time to burn. There aren't many languages that I'd be interested in adding to my long list of programming tools, but Elixir seems to be a sensible choice. I did help you with your Elixir issue. Yeah, I'm happy that you say that. Did I actually help you? I mean, that's a bit why I'm doing this live coding stream in the first place. So it's good to know that I was helpful. So these were the most obvious places. The remaining list shouldn't be too long. I actually remember that we were... Oh yeah, I see. You were building a web application using Phoenix, and we were talking about the template syntax with or without the percent signs. Yep. Spec helper. Could simply... Guess we can... This is one of the comments I'd like to eliminate. I just had a similar discussion with a colleague this week. In clean code principles, you should be as stingy with comments as possible and let the code speak for itself. Take this thing here, for example. The comment says enable factory girl methods, and it's correct because config include factory girl syntax methods does exactly that. But see what happens when I update this and using the new class name. Now I have a comment that is a lie, basically, and that's what happens all the time in coding, that you have a comment that refers to code that isn't there anymore. So in this case, include factory bot syntax methods is pretty self-explanatory, and we can simply get rid of this comment once and for all. And now we have the cluster order mailer preview. Cluster order mailer preview. That's simply to create example data that this mailer preview can use. Let's close that stuff. Man, I have lots of files open here. You've always been programming for a year now. A year exactly. Well, congratulations. How was it? I hope you had a pretty productive year. You haven't worked much with Elixir lately? So you're pretty good at JavaScript. Not sure that's something you... Well, that puts you ahead of me, to be honest, because my JavaScript knowledge is almost zero. I haven't been doing front-end programming in decades, and so I never had the opportunity to deepen my JavaScript knowledge, but I'm very aware of that fact that I should change that. So I guess JavaScript will be my first choice before Elixir. I'm pretty bad at leaving comments when I code, and I do something interesting as heck. I forget comments, but I do use very self-explanatory function variable names. Well, that's the most important thing. Make your code speak for itself. Use names that convey meaning, that convey context, and you won't need comments. Comments should be used only if something isn't completely obvious. And before you use a comment, you should ask yourself, why is it that way in the first place? Sometimes there are things that aren't obvious, but sometimes it's just that you could improve your code and make it obvious, even by simply introducing a new variable, where you, for example, say, instead of very obfuscated function that no one knows what it does, you could use a variable that has a very explanatory name, and say variable is equals this function, and then use the variable name from there on. If you can't just rename the function name to grab it there, that's a thing you could do. And introducing a new variable name doesn't hurt you, and it's more useful than just a comment telling people what this strange function does. You know, before this I didn't really know what I wanted to be when I grew up, but I have a pretty good idea now. Wow! That's great if you can say that. That really makes my day, man. So out with it. What is it that you'd like to do? Support controller helpers. Factory girl. Factory bot. Well, yeah, I could guess the obvious. I wanted to hear it from you. And the development seeds. Seeds. Where is it? How can it not? How can it not find this? DB seeds development. Here we go. And I guess we should use a find and replace. Factory girl, factory bot. Replace all. Bloop. That's that. So let's see. Yep, we're clean. I know that is very vague, but yeah, I love gaming, and programming is sort of like gaming. Yeah, it is, isn't it? Guess that's why I love JavaScript. It's logical, it makes sense, and once you write a line of code, you see an instant change. Yep, it does. Using Vue, I made a web editor, form generator, which I'm kind of proud of. Yeah, that sounds awesome. Vue would be one of the frameworks that I'd like to learn on top of plain JavaScript. It seems to have quite an enthusiastic following, and it seems to be pretty popular. So Vue seems to be a good choice. And on top of that, Go Rails, which is a guy doing screencasts about Rails, does have a few screencasts on integrating Vue with Rails. So that would be, I think, a good entry point for myself. So yeah, it seems to make things much easier. By the way, I used to have the Twitch chat on screen on the right side where you see this black block above my face, which is pretty dark at the moment, by the way. Guess that's better. However, OBS seems to crash when I include web sources. The browser source component seems to be buggy, and it did crash my live stream quite a few times. And last time I had removed all the browser components and it held up. So there seems to be something wrong with the browser sources, and until that's fixed, I'm afraid we won't have the on-screen chat and the on-screen notifications for followers and stuff. By the way, if you haven't yet, follow the stream so I get notified whenever I go online, which seems to be pretty unplanned at the moment. I'm sorry, I'll try to be more reliable. Okay, so we have done that. So I guess we should run bundle install. We have factory bot 5. Oh, okay. See, that would be one major version above the 4 that we had before. So let's say, do I have? Yeah, the application isn't running at the moment. So Docker compose up to start my. We haven't even been running Docker. Okay, so we'll have to wait for this. Yeah. I'm going to run my tests in the Docker containers that I'm managing with Docker Compose here. I'm a bit concerned about the Rubocop thing I mentioned earlier, because VS Code here was giving me Rubocop errors, which would mean that we have new style definitions active in the master branch that might break our tests here, and I hope that's not the case. It should be, all the changes I did recently should be contained in the other branch here in 448 Rubocop, but yeah, I'm not sure anymore. I feel I should learn more backend server-side stuff so I could make a fully working website, for example. Sure, yeah, but and that's not too easy. That's not too hard. Building a simple CRUD functionality website, so create, replace, update, delete, is pretty easy in every language that is modern. So you considered learning some PHP. PHP, I wouldn't recommend PHP. I have been coding PHP since the late 1990s. My first public talk was about the newly introduced PHP 3.0. And it's not a bad language. However, PHP is a language that has a very shallow learning curve at the start, but as soon as you'd like to do things that are more sophisticated, the learning curve will get pretty steep. Ruby, for example, I think is more linear in this. It ramps up more smoothly. It asks a bit more of you at the start, not too much though, and I think you'll like it better in the long run than PHP. Also, PHP seems to carry a lot of baggage from the early days with strange naming of functions, inconsistent naming. Sometimes functions have an underscore, sometimes they don't, and things like that. And in my experience, Ruby seems to be more consistent, more logical. And yeah, since you're already in Elixir, why not stay there and build something? The reason I am interested in Elixir is because it's so highly capable in parallel computing, which is exactly what a backend web application needs to do. It needs to respond to hopefully a lot of requests at the same time. And there's where Elixir seems to have its strengths. So you definitely should have a look at things, how they are in the Elixir world. I guess what I want, if possible, is use a backend language to make API calls and handle front-end logic and rendering with JavaScript, for example. If possible, yeah, that's perfectly possible. It's just not that you handle the API calls. Well, yeah, you provide the API, so you do actually handle. Yeah, you don't make API calls, you handle API calls that come from your front-end logic, which is perfectly well coded in JavaScript. So that's how these decoupled web applications work. You have an API in the backend. Under this API is the database and all the data storage and handling stuff. And you have a front-end application, most often built in JavaScript, that calls the API of your backend software and says, okay, my user wants to have a list of thingamajigs, so I'd like the first 10, please. And that's what the API then gets from the database, passes it on to your JavaScript application, and your JavaScript application creates a lovely presentation of all these thingamajigs. We have Elixir on the backend at work, and we use Axios right now. And that's the first time I heard of Axios, but yeah, makes sense. Let's take a look at how my Docker stuff is doing while it's spinning up here, and I'll have to create the databases as well. Can take a look because I'm pretty curious what is Elixir Axios. Full stack React with Phoenix, using Axios for network requests in React. Okay. Here, building a JSON API in Elixir with Phoenix 1.4. That looks as if it's right up your alley. Elixir, Postgres as the database, REST clients, so that's your JavaScript application. If you go with Axios, don't forget to pass the configuration option with credentials true. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what I meant. You have a backend application built with Elixir and Phoenix, and it serves data to REST clients, and your JavaScript application built with Vue could be exactly this REST client. Okay, here we are, and let's what? Didn't it start the application container? So I have to rebuild the image, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, of course, I do have to rebuild the application container because I've changed the gem file. So let's do dc build app, Docker Compose build app. That way it'll recreate the application image with the new factory bot gem. I think when we did pure Elixir Phoenix, we had to do something special when sending or fetching data from the backend. Uh-huh. Yeah, you probably need to package the data on one side and then unpack it on the other side, and that's what these libraries often do. Maybe that is good for your home project. Try to set up JSON API with Elixir and make some magic happen. Yeah, exactly. Why not? Just noticed that my project description isn't up to date anymore. I'm not resolving style issues yet. I've been doing that for the past few sessions, but at the moment I'm replacing or updating a test gem. I plan to do some style improvements later, and I hope the current setup doesn't force me to get into that right away. Because my concern is that if I have these style issues in the master branch too, I'll have to resolve 500 style violations before I can get a green test again, and not looking forward to that. I thought I could chip away at that in its own branch until I'm ready. I'll be honest, I'm happy that we have this chat. Recently, my sessions have been quite lonely with no one engaging in the chat, and so that confirms my hunch that maybe doing live coding over the weekend would be a bit more interactive. I just opened a beer, so I guess I won't get any less talkative. You know what? I'd be inclined to have a beer myself. I have a bottle of Wicklow Wolf in the fridge that has been waiting there for weeks now. And it isn't the worst of times to have a beer on a Saturday afternoon while doing a bit of work. As if I didn't have enough work during the week. But that's that's another change that I thought would make sense. Returning to actual work on my live coding stream. If you've been here before, you know that I tried to create my own live coding projects so I can work with a public Git repository, for example. But I realized that I'm not a good product owner for fictitious projects, and racking my head over what I could do in my next live coding session. While there is a huge list of issues, many of them actual bugs for our hosting dashboard, didn't seem to make sense. So I decided to get back to working on real life work projects here on the stream, even though I'm not able to give you access to the repository so you can see what I've changed. It does make things much more easy to see what I'm going to work on next. We also have a Monster energy drink and a bottle of bourbon. Will be a good weekend. Sounds like it. I'm not that much into bourbon. I'm more of an Irish whiskey guy, and you're right, I should have a sip of Jameson over the weekend as well. Just a sip, of course. Well, if you both have time someday, maybe you can help me get started on the Elixir API and such, and I'm sure we'll learn something, but maybe you will too. I am pretty sure we will both learn something. That has always been the case whenever I did pair programming. Even when I went into the sessions, if I'm being honest, thinking, well, that will be easy. I know everything about this, and I'll just have to direct the way. In the end, I did learn something. Bourbon with Monster. Well, I did like whiskey cola back in the day, which mostly was bourbon, Jim Beam or something. So I can imagine how energy drink and bourbon go together. I wouldn't mind drinking it, but I wouldn't buy it and to have it at home, I guess. I know it's a disgrace to mix whiskey with anything other than ice cubes, and there are people that even would say, why would you dilute your whiskey with water, even if it's frozen? For example, I don't think I'd put ice into an Irish whiskey. Irish whiskey is very smooth, or well, I'm looking for another word for weak. The taste is very gentle. Let's put it that way. So I don't think it makes much sense to dilute it, except what many people do is just put in a few drops of water to get rid of the spirit taste. And I've experienced that myself, that putting a few drops of water into a certain kind of whiskey will make it much better. Okie dokie, so we've built our application, so let's restart the dev environment. DC up. I always have my Docker containers running in a Tmux window, so I can see some of the output. For example, if the application container doesn't start, I can see it right away, or I at least can look it up. So that seems to have happened here. So let's get back to... Now I'm confused. The application container crashed when I tried to log in. Okay. Well, maybe we should stick to the version 4, because this looks like it's a breaking change in factory bot, that a method I've been using here, item, doesn't work anymore. I guess I'll go back to using version 4.8 in a pessimistic way, because I don't want to make any upgrade changes right now. I'd just like to see my tests running again with the new gem. I was a bit too optimistic here. So let's say we'll take everything in version 4, so 4.8 or later. So let's do another bundle install here, see if it works locally. Hey, the Stormcrow, thanks for following the stream. Happy to have you here. Welcome. I appreciate everyone following the stream. I'm not Jack Daniels fan, but I bought their Tennessee Honey, and it's actually just down my alley. So, is it a whiskey named Tennessee Honey with honey flavors, or is it an actual honey with whiskey flavors? Okay, that's that. Now we are down to 411. We'll have to rebuild our application container, unfortunately. Okay, so it's a honey flavored whiskey. Yeah, I like sweet stuff, and so that might something I'd like to. Jameson, for example, did a few experiments lately with maturing their whiskey in pre-used casks. So they have a series called Jameson Cask Mates, where they matured whiskey in stout casks, for example. So casks that had been used for stout beer previously, and there are a few others, I think. I can't remember which. And I did like these subtle extra flavors. I think I had a bottle of Cask Mates from stout because I do like stout as well. So I have the occasional Guinness, of course, living here in Ireland. I don't spend my Saturday evening sipping whiskey-flavoured honey. Well, you never know. Fanta, Malibu, and a dash of banana liquor is great. As a mix, Fanta, Malibu, and a dash of banana liquor. Malibu itself is quite sweet with its cocoa liquor, isn't it? That sounds like something would cause my teeth to fall out. On the other hand, banana and coconut go great together, of course. Mindori melon liquor with some sour lemony soda is great. Yeah, sour is great as well. So if I'm in a cocktail bar, I often order whiskey sour. How did we get the whiskey and liquor live stream here? Man, the things you do while your application is building. I'm afraid my kids would be listening next door and wondering why I'm talking about booze all the time while I'm supposed to talk about programming stuff. Yeah, I'm looking forward to a nice, relaxed evening with my wife, and you gave me a bit of inspiration. What to have while we are looking some kind of movie. Yeah, watching things build is the more boring part of development, and especially live development. I haven't seen Ready Player One yet. I should, though. I have the book in my shelf up there, I think. Where is it? Oh, I think it's I have it as an ebook, I think. Yeah, it's probably in my Kindle library. And you're right. If Ready Player One is on the iTunes store, I'd probably grab it there. Have you seen it? Is it any good? I wonder how they did the virtual stuff. Truly enjoyed it. Sounds good. You're making me curious. Strange, I thought I had the paper book, but I might have given it away because I also had the ebook. Whiskey Lexicon. Short History of Time. No, it's not there. You're a gamer, though, could be why you loved it so much. Well, I am too. I tried to start a live stream, streaming myself playing World of Warcraft, but I felt I was so crap at the game that I didn't want to expose myself. Got better, though. I'm trying to get to 1,000 Radar IO score at the moment by running Mythic Plus, so let's see how that goes. But first, let's get this application tested. Okay, we've got that. Another try. DC up. Application is running at least. Let's see if it allows us to nuke the database, which will also already use the new factory bot gem, because I've changed the factory files that are used for generating the seed data here. Okay, at least there's no syntax stuff. Now it's going to load the seed data. Yeah, that did the trick. Now it's building the test database that is separate from the development database. So FactoryBot already worked. Lots of deprecation warnings though. I guess that's because the older database migrations don't adhere to the new Rails 5 migration standards, so we don't have any Rails version specifications in there. We'll have to do them eventually. Let's see if I already have an issue for this. Probably have, but just to make sure. That's how I try to deal with these things. I can't fix everything at the same time, but I can document them by creating an issue. So let's look for deprecated. Yeah, migrations deprecation. I already made a note last September, so that should be done eventually. Okay, that's that. And now let's run rake test, which will run Rubocop first, and we'll see if I've actually broken my master branch. Oh, no, it does not. That's nice. Because, yeah, that's exactly what I did before. I'm running Rubocop here with the Rails test set for the app directory, and then I'm running it again with the normal set of style checks for the lib directory. However, I don't run it for the spec directory where all my test suites are, and that's why I'm not getting any issues here, or the test suite doesn't break, even though there are lots of issues in the spec directory. Okay, so it's contained in its own branch. I'm a bit relieved now. And just in my defense, I did run Rubocop for the whole application code before, but I didn't have the Rubocop RSpec gem enabled. So Rubocop did not detect issues with my testing style. The general Ruby style was okay, but now I realize that there are a lot of testing style issues with test examples that are too long and things like that. And yeah, that will occupy me for a while. What do we have here? Deprecation warning. Static attributes will be removed in factory bot 5.0. Please use dynamic attributes instead by wrapping the attribute value in a block. Okay, so we'll have to automatically update from static attributes to dynamic ones, install Rubocop RSpec, which I have in my own branch. And then run it with autocorrect for factory bot stuff. Cool? Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. And it seems to be pretty straightforward. I probably have SSH keys count 3, and it needs to be changed into SSH keys count with a 3 in these brackets. Okay. Now it's running the actual test suite. Historical movie I came across randomly once and really loved was Into the White. It's about a German fighter plane and an English fighter plane during World War II. They shot each other down over the mountains of Norway. There was a blizzard coming in, so they had to take shelter in the same cabin. Sounds interesting. Yeah, it's these. It sounds like a variation of Enemy Mine, just set in the past instead of the future. I'm probably dating myself with this reference. When did Enemy Mine come out? Yeah, in the 80s, of course. Need to head off. The guys wanted to play some Counter-Strike. Okay, have fun and don't get killed. Thanks for having this great chat. I really had fun. Okay, test suite's running fine. That's awesome. So I guess we can check this stuff in. Switch from factory girl to factory bot. That's another thing that I try to make my commit messages more useful, just having these few questions that I'm going to answer. Why is this change necessary? How does it address the issue? Does it have any side effects? And the references, like, for example, the comment that it resolves issue number 417. Issue, always a pleasure. We'll check it later this evening if you're live, or the next time I catch you on. Yeah, thanks. And I appreciate the spelling of next here. If anyone has a next station lying around that they don't want anymore, send it my way. I love these classic computer machines. I had an SGI, was it an Octane? Once. I didn't keep it for long because this machine made a noise you can't imagine. But it was great to have this old guard graphics workstation with a proper, robust Unix system. It's automatic in your browsers. It's crazy on the capital letters. Interesting. So your browser thinks that next should be spelled like the brand. Well, you can't fault it for that. Okay, the factory girl gem was renamed, so in order to stay current, we had to switch to the new one. I guess that explains things. Interesting. Yeah, I don't know what Autobot thought would be problematic here, because I guess that you mentioned that you are Norwegian, because that narrows it down to only how many people. But yeah, no worries. Woohoo! Okay, let's push this and have the CI system have some fun with it. Cool. So 417 is taken care of. I should assign this to myself because I should have done this from the start. And let's do a pull request for this as well. It did it again. Yeah, have a good evening too. Pull request. Only thing I'll have to do is join these lines. Here we go. Nice. And that's another issue taken care of. Okay, how are we on time? I started around before 5 and it's now before 6. I guess I'll stay for a few more minutes. Is there anything I could resolve quickly? How about this bug here? Serve static files is deprecated and will be removed in Rails 5.1. Please use config public file server enabled equals true instead. That seems to be pretty straightforward. So, assign it to myself. And let's get a new branch, 411, static files. I could disable this completely because we don't serve static files much. The only things we do serve is, I think, our API documentation that gets auto-generated. So I guess we'll leave it on for the time being, but it's not too important. I guess that's somewhere in Rails helper or in... We'll find it quickly. It's in the production environment. Production. And here we have serve static files. And it only does this if Rails serve static files is set. And so we can simply replace this reference with public file server enabled. I don't think we even have this environment variable set. But since we are at it, I will replace the quote signs to our standard. So that should take care of this. Where does it even turn up? I guess it's when tests run or something like that. Well, anyway, should do the trick. Let's see if this still works. Let's run rate test. Oh dear. Now we are back to the old gem, I guess. I don't want to rebuild my Docker image. But I'll have to, do I? Okay. So I really have to merge the previous pull request as quickly as possible so I don't have to rebuild my Docker containers all the time. Okay. I'm still concerned why this add dot takes this long. I do have a Docker ignore file, don't I? And we're ignoring .git and .env. We should also ignore log, I think, even though the logs shouldn't be that huge. What else might there be that doesn't belong in the Docker container? .git, .vs code. And everything else seems to be legitimate. Maybe the vendor? No, the vendor directory should be okay. Let's exclude the .vs code directory and the .chef directory. That might even... No, it's only development credentials, but still. We don't need it in the Docker container. And what's in .yardoc? Is this just temporary stuff? Don't think it'll be too much. How big is .vs code? 4K and yardoc 52K. That's not a reason why add takes this long. Maybe it's just my local Docker setup. However, we are done. and should be able to restart our development system. Back with the old gem. Still using factory girl. Okay. Let's create the database. I guess since the application is already running here, and I guess that's where we got the deprecation warning in the first place. The initializer that I changed, or the environment file that I changed, is already in action here. So I guess if things were wrong, we would already have an error message. Still, I'd like to be thorough, so we'll run the test suite again. And if that's successful, I guess I'll call it a day. Test. So far, so good. Now the actual integration test suite. Oh, it's Brakeman first. Brakeman is complaining here about possible SQL injection issues, but these issues are in command line scripts that can't be run from the outside anyway. So I'll fix them eventually, just to prevent people from copying that stuff and propagating the issues even more. But I'm not concerned about them at the moment. It's not in the actual web application. It's just in, as the directory says, one-shot scripts that do some data munging, or did some data munging. We could even remove them because we don't need them anymore. The data they're concerned with has been munched thoroughly and once and for all. Slayer Doth, how are you today? Happy to have you here, even though you're just showing up at the end again. Yeah, things are fine. Things are fine. I'm trying to get a new schedule running where I'm live streaming on the weekend. I was late today because if I'm honest, I overslept and missed my window, but I decided to do something anyway, just not as long as I had planned to. And I'm just about to run my test suite here, and if that's okay, and it looks like it won't break in the last 9 seconds here, I'll commit this and I'll be done for today. You have been in South Africa. What did you do in South Africa? I hope you were vacationing and enjoying the weather and the country and have returned recharged. You have been learning 6502 machine code. Awesome. High five, man. Cool. 6502 machine code. That was the first assembler language I learned back in 1985, I think. I love my LDAs and JMPs. Mostly to visit sick relatives. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. That's a pity. I hope they are getting better. But yeah, thumbs up for you for visiting them. Okay, that's that here. Write my commit message here. How is South Africa, though? I've never been there before, but I'd like to see it someday. Deprecated application setting. Luckily, Afrikaans is a blend of Germanic and Dutch, so I'm able to draw on my German from school. Yeah, that's correct. My wife is an anthropologist, and she spent a few months in Namibia learning Afrikaans, and it really is very. You can really see its roots. Not politically stable. Yeah, that's true. So, are you building a C64 game, or what are your plans with your 6502 assembler? See, that's why I name my branches with the issue number, because that way I don't have to remember the issue number. I can simply see it in my commit editor here that it resolves number 411. Then again, they had apartheid for like 50 years or so. Yeah, these things are hard to overcome. Even if the political landscape changes, it'll take years and decades for real change to come in. Hoping to make a game? Well, I'm very curious to see how that goes. I should win in the lottery and not have to do serious work anymore, so I could focus on things like that, because getting back into this, into the light blue screen, well, yeah, I guess that's typical retro nostalgia, but still, fun times. Do you know what the most shocking thing I learned about apartheid was? Tell me. I'm not too aware of how things are at the moment, and so maybe I can brag in front of my wife with my newfound knowledge. You could have the same job as a black man and both of you earn the same salary under apartheid. But the black man then pays more income tax because of his skin color. Well, that's not quite equality, is it? Having the same contract, but then being charged more tax by the state just because of your race. Damn, that's far from fair. Well, let's hope that things will change. Well, things are changing already and have changed, but let's get this stupid stuff behind us. Stupid stuff like racism. That's that. Let's run a pull request. Well, 2 pull requests in a single session of just a bit more than an hour is quite productive, isn't it? So I guess I'll wrap it up for today. Let's also check in the docker ignore file here. I'll do that in the master branch because it won't break things. Add directories to docker ignore. Let's push this as well. CI system will have a bit work with all these pushes. What they're doing in South Africa at the moment is an affirmative action initiative called BBE, Black Business Empowerment, where you are legally required to assign a certain portion of your company shares to minority individuals. This means that those people can share in your company's profits without needing to lift a finger. That sounds strange. So if you have a business, you are compelled to, or legally required to, have minority people to have a share in your company, which of course enables them to participate in the profits. That's a strange thing. I guess I'll look at that. I'm curious how this works. But yeah, even that's the other side of trying to get rid of these things. Sometimes the initiatives and approaches that people take to fight unfair practices, to fight discrimination and things like that, often these approaches are flawed as heck and create other problems while trying to solve these problems. So yeah, it's a bit sad that we can't just snap our fingers. Yeah, I can imagine that you are not a fan of this implementation, because that doesn't encourage business growth and sounds like it'll create more antagonism towards minorities, because now you could say that they can take money from your company without putting in the work, and that's certainly not what you want to do if you want to strengthen minorities. Well, anyway, I guess I'll call it a day. It's time to wrap this up. We have a clean master branch. We have 2 more branches with pull requests for them. I'm pretty happy to have resolved at least 2 or 3 bugs now. I will be back later next week for some spontaneous live coding sessions, whenever my schedule allows me to work on code, I probably fire up OBS and stream. So if you don't yet, follow the stream so you get a notification whenever I'm going online, when I go live to be exact. And let's see, we could switch to the big picture. And I'll try to be on time next Saturday at 3:30 p.m. GMT, with a longer live stream. I don't know how long my live streams will be that I do during the week, but they'll probably be an hour or so too. Yeah, click follow. If you have any questions or feedback on these sessions, simply tweet me at fullstacksensei. And I'm going to upload the recording of these sessions to YouTube as well. You can find my recordings at youtube.fullstacksensei.com. Make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel as well, so you get notifications when new recordings go up. And for today, thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. Thanks for chatting. See you next time. Cheers.